When a single Boston school improves, it provides a lesson for the rest of the city. For the past 12 years, that learning opportunity has been spotlighted and rewarded in a competition overseen by the educational improvement nonprofit EdVestors. To talk about the latest results are the principal of this year's School on the Move, the Harvard-Kent Elementary School in Charlestown, Jason Gallagher, and the president and CEO of EdVestors, Marinell Rousmaniere. Thank you both for being with us.
Thanks, Chris.
Good. I want to start with Marinell. What was it about the Harvard-Kent that made you pick them out this year?
That's a great question. We have 3 finalist schools every year for this prize. We try not to make it a competition, although it might feel that way for schools, but we identify 3 finalist schools, and the folks who do that work actually are a panel of sort of C-level folks from higher ed and business, so EdVestors sort of facilitates that process. And so they saw 3 wonderful schools, the Kenny Elementary School, the Bradley Elementary School, and the Harvard-Kent. And I think what made the Harvard-Kent stand out is their work really being a good school and getting better and better every year, and doing so while closing achievement gaps, which is a huge need across the city, and those gaps have been being closed among students of color and among special education students and English language learners. And so that both improvement across the 5-year period that we look at their data and then get to see sort of what that school looks like when we visit. I think it was really that story of closing gaps, getting better and better every year. And so that is an example that we want to lead with for the rest of our schools in the city.
Okay. Turning to the Harvard-Kent, what were the gaps you were trying to close there?
Well, you know, when we look at our student population, since we have a very diverse group of kids, we look at kids not only in groups but also as individuals. So when we saw gaps between students with disabilities and typically developing students. We saw gaps between students of color versus Asian students, and we made intentional work at the school to make sure that all of our kids are making the progress they need to make to be successful in school, and our teachers do great work to make sure that that happens.
You have some English language learners. Mm-hmm. What was your strategy with those students?
Well, learning language, I can't imagine what it's like to learn a language at the age of 6, 7, and 8. But we have highly trained staff who use really specific strategies to support kids who are English language learners. We try to immerse them in the English language, not only just being able to read and write, but also to speak and to listen and to have conversations. And oftentimes when the kids have more English conversations, it helps them become stronger readers and writers. But our teachers are also very highly skilled in supporting those students, so we make sure that those type of positions are there for the kids so that they can make the progress that they need to make.
Marinell, what about the applicability of this to other schools in Boston? There must be a lot of the same situations. You've got these learners, you've got students with disabilities, mm-hmm. or even some emotional needs. So how can you transfer what happened here to these other schools?
Yeah. It's a great question, because that's a key piece of the prize, right? One piece is to highlight the good things that are happening within the Boston Public Schools and those schools that are sort of examples for everyone else, and to shine a light on that work. The other is to document that work for other schools. So we've done that in various different ways over the years, both through individual case studies of the winning schools and by looking back over time around what are the patterns around schools that we're seeing. And so some of that work we'll get totally under the hood at the Harvard-Kent and what that story will be. I imagine the achievement gap piece in that closing will be a piece of it, but what we've seen over time by looking at schools that have won every year, including the Harvard-Kent and the other 2 finalists, is a set of practices that are really important around facilitative leadership, the kind of leadership that we saw that Jason brings to the schools, in terms of then allowing the kind of teacher collaboration to happen, to really power what happens in the classroom, having strong partnerships, both with family and with community, and the Harvard-Kent is a great example of that in terms of bringing folks in a really strategic way to support their students and to enrich that community. And then the first among equals is really that rigorous instruction and student support. So talked about how they do that around English language learners, but really those practices across all schools and using data to drive them is what we've seen every single year for the past 14 years.
Jason, one of the things excited about your school, as Marinell just mentioned, is you have this rigorous but caring culture. What does that mean for a teacher?
Well, it means knowing more than what they're getting on tests. It means knowing more than their MCAS scores. It means knowing something else about them that you can talk to our students about other than academics. We spend a lot of time getting to know our kids, greeting them every day when they walk in the door, spending time with them during their lunch and their recess, and making them feel like they're an important part of like our school family. And when you know more about a kid than just how they do in spelling, the kid feels more connected to the school. And then the students are more likely to work a little bit harder or to feel connected and to have more success. And our teachers feel like they're having more success when they get to know the kids better, and when they see the growth that they're making, it makes the teachers feel really good as well. So happy kids, happy teachers, happy families, is really the best way to start towards having a school that's having success.
Now, you might have students who are in every other way might be totally normal, but they have a difficult family situation. Mm-hmm. There might be an immigration cloud over their head that they don't understand, but they're really worried about. How do teachers deal with that?
We just talk every day about being a safe and welcoming school for kids. Whatever's going on outside of our school, it's happening. We don't pretend that it doesn't exist, but we want the kids to know that they're safe, they're welcome, they're going to learn, they're going to make friends, and they're going to be successful if they come to our school. And that's the most important thing that we do for our kids. They're going to do all that, and they're going to learn how to read, and they're going to learn how to write, and they're going to become great mathematicians and scientists. But they're also going to enjoy school, and they're going to feel safe, and they're going to feel wanted, and they're going to feel loved.
This is BNN News. We're talking with Marinell Rousmaniere from EdVestors and Jason Gallagher from the Harvard-Kent Elementary School. Marinell, there were a couple of other schools that you cited for good work this year. Could you tell us a little bit about those?
Sure. So the two other finalist schools that were in the prize process this year were the Bradley Elementary School in East Boston and the Kenny in Dorchester. All elementary schools this year that were finalists, all of whom saw over the period of the review real improved results in their quantitative scores and had real stories to tell about improvement. And I think one of the things that stood out was this piece about relationships that Jason talked about. I think at each of those schools in different ways, we saw a focus on rigorous academics and student support, and part of that support around building really deep relationships with students, whether it was at the Bradley where they do a morning assembly outside every day, where not only are the students part of that, but their families are a part of that as well to really strengthen those bonds. The Kenny has like a morning meeting in every classroom where they begin the day to really sort of hear about, like, how was your soccer game yesterday? What might have happened at home this morning that started your day? They got a nice band there too. They have a great marching band. They sure do. And so these like very intentional practices that can be systematized that kind of create that space that Jason talked about, of that welcoming environment that allows kids to be ready to learn.
Jason, one other thing I noted here was about how teachers work with each other. When I was a kid, I thought they were just in these silos, one for each grade. But how do you do it?
Honestly, it's the teachers. They do it themselves. They want to collaborate and work together. They want to know more about the kids. Our fifth grade teachers want to know more about the kids and how they performed in fourth grade beyond academically. So our teachers want to work closely together, because as a team we work better than we do in individual silos. And I think that's really one of the strong points of our teachers are, the fact that they want to work as a team. And all they ask from me is to make sure that, they're able to do that, and we provide them the platform to do it and the partnerships to help them. And our teachers really do the rest of the work. But then working together it's like vital to our success.
Now there is some prize money here. It was $100,000. What's going to become of that? Does either of you know yet?
So we're currently planning how we're going to spend the money. We didn't have a pre-designated plan for the money, because we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But we're going to work together as a staff, and we'll include families and kids on the decision on how that money can help continue our work moving forward.
And that's one of the great examples of the Harvard-Kent, and that kind of collaborative and facilitative leadership is like, they're not going to Jason's not going to come here and say, this is how we're going to do it, but they're going to work together as a team to figure out what's best for that school.
Thank you both very much, Marinell Rousmaniere and Jason Gallagher.
Thanks.
In a moment, a Boston celebration of culture from South Asia. We'll tell you about the 16th annual Boston Bhangra competition, but first, this message.